the problem with cassava conventionally in the region is that most people will rent land for about 2 to 3 years, and they will just plant monocrop cassava. It's a very extractive process that really depletes the soil. So 2 or 3 years later, it's not that they don't want to continue renting that land, it's that the land won't grow any more cassava. It's just been depleted, so they leave. And so the model that we've began to experiment with is a rotational cassava concept where cassava is planted, and then after it's harvested, it takes about 8 to 9 months. Then we're going to let that plot of land rest and either plant some corn or some beans or something that restores kind of the soil balance and the nitrogen balance. And where it was left unplanted, that's where we'll plant the next season. So it'll create this kind of rotational model where you'll be able to rotate these two crops back and forth and create the regenerative ecosystem to not just sustain the health of the soil, but to actually, improve it year over year.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with Juan, who has started this amazing new brand that personally, as a gluten-free enthusiast, I'm really excited about. So I will just let him get into it and introduce the amazing brand. Tell us, how did you get into the space and kind of what got you started down this road?
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, so this is a family-owned, family-operated business that began due to my sister's health condition and our journey, kind of exploring alternative healing and some non-traditional medicine that led to our family learning about nutrition as medicine. And we saw, her go through this journey of really healing her autoimmunity by eating real food, eating nutrient dense, nourishing, traditional ancestral foods. And my parents wanted to start a brand, a snack brand that aligned with these values. And this led to Artisan Tropic beginning, sourcing really high quality ingredients and making clean plantain and cassava snacks.
I can't think of any better origin story, because my origin story was an autoimmune condition led to nutritional alternative healing that led to the understanding of why regenerative ag is creating food that heals. So I'm always excited. Oh, we're all on this road together. It's not just working for me, it's working for so many others.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, tell me about so your family goes through all this work to heal her and get her better and provide her amazing food. And then they're like, why not provide it to the world? Take us a little bit down that journey.
Yeah. So my parents had at the time a food distribution business, and they weren't exactly in the better for you space. It was, very conventional. And so in that journey and kind of realizing we don't really believe in this stuff that we're distributing, the idea to start a brand of really clean snacks was kind of like a natural place to go. And so our Colombian roots and origins kind of led us to explore the options there, and we found that plantain and cassava, being a staple in the tropics, a staple in Colombia and in South America, was a really great opportunity to introduce a snack that was very minimally processed, very clean, into the better for you natural market that was starting to take off in the natural space here in the States. So that's kind of how it started. And it's been about 9 years now of this journey and exploring and evolving, and kind of our curiosity leading us to where we are.
I love it. Tell us a little bit about the products that are on the shelves now. You've got a sweet and a salty. Take us down kind of what's on the shelves right now. And you can definitely buy it on your website, but tell us a little bit about the distribution too. Are you everywhere? Are you in certain ones? Where are you guys expanding to?
Yeah, so we began slow and trying to scale at a sustainable way, and that's very different than the way a lot of brands operate in this space. And so it's very unique. It's very, I think it's really awesome, and it, um, all the information and all the knowledge we've gained around regenerative agriculture um, has also additionally jumped us into kind of this paradigm and way of thinking around regenerative business concepts. And something that's really easy and maybe draws us in is the health of the soil and the quality of the products that we grow. But that has taken us down a road of like, well, how does that translate into the way we do business? So I say that all to say that we, without maybe knowing it, have kind of done business in a very regenerative way because we haven't taken on a bunch of investment or tried to grow at a unreasonable rate that isn't sustainable without a bunch of capital and burning through money. So we started very slowly. We got into like our local Whole Foods in Charlotte. Me and my sister went and knocked on the door, and took about a year to get, on shelf. And then me and her went to all the local Whole Foods in the area and took, samples and sell sheets and started to get into more and more doors that way. Eventually, one whole region brought us in, and then a couple of years later, Whole Foods Global wanted us to be a global brand, and so that's kind of how it's been. And we've expanded, from Charlotte, kind of across the rest of the states, and we're in over 5,000 points of sale now, and the major natural players: Whole Foods Market, Sprouts, Natural Grocers. And kind of expanding into some more conventional accounts now, like HEB and Wegmans. So that's kind of been the journey so far.
That's amazing. There are so many food brands that they're like, hello, this is our first year and we're going to go to Shark Tank and blow it up. But I think being a regenerative brand, it just makes sense to grow at a natural level, not a like souped up steroids version. But I think it's an
Yeah.
authenticity about a product, right? Like this is, it's growing at a rate that is natural, which we do like
Hmm.
that word. So
Yeah, yeah,
tell me about the product, sweet and sour. Take me on a little bit of the journey and, why you chose those two different products as your leaders.
yeah. So we have our plantain SKUs, which are our sea salt plantain and our naturally sweet. And cassava, we have our sea salt cassava and our jalapeno. And so plantain is a fruit similar to a banana, and we source the highest quality plantain. There's over 200 varieties of plantains, and we've made a lot of different samples with different quality plantains, and found that the ones we use that grow in the coffee region of Colombia are the highest quality. They're the largest in size, and they have the best kind of humidity profile that allows us to cook it, and the chips don't end up being super greasy. So sea salt is number one bestseller. Really amazing to dip in like a guacamole or salsa.
Well, that's your
And
test
then
note, right? It needs salt and then it's good. Like, you have a really high quality product when that's your number one seller.
yeah, so it's cooked when the fruit is greener, and a little bit of salt, and it gets kind of that savory profile. And then the sweet is just two ingredients. It's just the plantain. It ripens a little more before we cook it, and it brings out all those natural sugars. And then we cook it in our sustainably sourced palm oil. So it's just those two ingredients, and it's incredibly sweet, delicious, kind of that delicious little sweet treat that I want after meal sometimes without a bunch of the junk. So those are our two plantain flavors at the moment, and then we have our sea salt cassava and our jalapeno cassava. And so again, sea salt being the number one. It's cassava is a root tuber, so it's similar to a potato. But one of the great benefits is that it's a nightshade-free vegetable. So nightshades are known to cause a lot of inflammation and give a lot of people with autoimmunities or different health conditions problems. And so cassava is a really awesome replacement for your traditional potato chip, in that it doesn't cause inflammation. So it's AIP friendly. And the kind of texture is very light and crispy and similar to potato chip, whereas plantains are a little more dense. And then the jalapeno is kind of a little alternative to the sea salt. So it's got a little spice and a little kick to it. And
That's going to be the first one I
I
go
love that
after
one.
when I see it in the
Yeah.
grocery store. That is like, yeah, that one for me.
Yeah, I'm a spicy guy, so I love that one.
I love it. So I'm sure you went down a road of sourcing. Those are not very well. Cassava has definitely become more number one, but before that, like that road of sourcing, going through Colombia. Tell me a little bit about like the journey and like how you chose to get into the regenerative space, like exactly what regenerative means in an agroforestry situation. Because a tuber is it's not easy to be a no-till if you have to go into the ground to get it. Kind of what are the practices associated with the sourcing?
Yeah, of course. So originally we started co-manufacturing with an awesome place in Colombia in the coffee region I mentioned. And we met one of the outgrowers that was providing the product for that co-manufacturing facility at the time. And he's a second generation plantain farmer, incredible experience and knowledge and really passion for what he does. And funny, part of this whole family story is that my sister ended up marrying his son. And
Well,
so,
keeping it in the family, very literally.
yeah. So, and even to this day, that family owned and operated is very true to the essence of who we are. We have 13 direct family members that work for the brand.
Amazing.
We continue to have a great relationship with my sister's father-in-law and his farms. And so that's how it started. We began to travel and visit the region a lot more and get to know farmers and agronomists in the region. In 2019, we finished the construction of our very own manufacturing facility. So now we're more directly, looking at relationships and sourcing. We began to really, from my sister's father-in-law's kind of lead, began to learn about this idea of regenerative agriculture, of reducing chemical inputs, of having live cover crops and biodiverse roots in the soil at all times. And we actually began to work with Terragenesis, which is a really awesome consultancy around regenerative agriculture. And we said, hey, we are learning, we're curious, we would love your help in kind of designing our supply system around regenerative concepts and standards. They came in and worked with us for almost a year, analyzing our supply system and looking at, what are the standards that are specific to this context, that are specific to this tropical region of Colombia, because that's going to look very different than, the Midwest in the United States or the Northeast. Or, every region has very specific requirements as far as the way things are done and the way that nature works in the ecosystems that you're working in. They really taught us a ton. And again, not just about the soil piece, but about what does it look like as a business to think regeneratively. We ended up starting a pilot at our very own family farm to implement some of these designs around, increasing biodiversity. So instead of monocropping plantain, we introduced some coffee, some cacao, some different perennial elements to the design of the farm to increase the resiliency and reduce kind of the susceptibility to pests and plagues and rains and droughts, different things that affect this tropical region. And the idea was to do that on our own farm, which is maybe a fifth of the raw material that we source, and to be able to demonstrate that it was viable, that it would work, that it would be financially beneficial to farmers. So that's been about 2.5 years now, where we've seen incredible results by eliminating all chemical inputs. There's no till really in the plantain harvest because there's no need for it. But there is biodiverse cover crops and there's no herbicide sprayed. And one of the neatest pictures is that when we started all this, the farm directly next to us was practicing very conventional agriculture. And so they spray glyphosate all the time. The soils are barren. And then you'd walk right over to our farm, and it's just like lush cover crops and a green biomass accumulating, and all the plantain that's harvested and chopped, all that biomass is left as fertilizer for the next plants that are growing. So that's how it started. We've now expanded to do some different land rental projects where we're doing some concepts with plantain, like I explained, plantain, coffee, some cacao. And then we've also introduced some cassava. And cassava is a root tuber, like you mentioned, so it's very different, but it's very minimally tilled. And then the problem with cassava conventionally in the region is that most people will rent land for about 2 to 3 years, and they will just plant monocrop cassava. It's a very extractive process that really depletes the soil. So 2 or 3 years later, it's not that they don't want to continue renting that land, it's that the land won't grow any more cassava. It's just been depleted. So they leave and go do it somewhere else. And so the model that we've began to experiment with is a rotational cassava concept where cassava is planted, and then after it's harvested, it takes about 8 to 9 months. Then we're going to let that plot of land rest and either plant some corn or some beans or something that restores kind of the soil balance and the nitrogen balance. And where it was left unplanted, that's where we'll plant the next season. So it'll create this kind of rotational model where you'll be able to rotate these two crops back and forth and create the regenerative ecosystem to not just sustain the health of the soil, but to actually, improve it year over year.
That is
So those are some of
amazing.
the things we're doing. Yeah.
I'm so blown away, and I'm like, man, I should probably move to Colombia. You're growing like all of my favorite things like together, right? Like it's got coffee and cassava and like cacao. I'll stay there. Like, if you need any extra help, I'll move in. But I think about the rise of cassava, right? Like that it was originally like something that was here and there. Now it's just in everything. Most gluten-free foods have a basis in it. And I've always been concerned, like, what is this boom? Because of course there's going to be farmers that are drawn to it, but we know root vegetables, like you said, are so extractive. So I think we've seen that in other places of the world. They have a pop of like a food that works for a while, but then the landscape is destroyed by people kind of gold rushing to that. So I think that deeper thought of like that rotation, not get it out, make as much as we possibly can, that like thought process of how many years can we grow this on this plot of land without just destroying it is amazing. So I think that's so fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one neat story so far as the proof of concept, because like you mentioned, I don't know of many or any farms at this scale that are producing cassava in this kind of regenerative rotational model. I know some family farms or some different like small operations that have some cassava in their agroforests or different things, but to the degree of like producing a massive amount for commercial reasons, I don't know of any others. So the interesting thing is that we designed this whole thing around an approximate yield of about 2.5 kilos per plant, and that's based on kind of conventional numbers in the region and what conventional cassava farmers are able to produce. And we just harvested the first round of this experimental regenerative cassava, and the plants produced an average of 5 kilos per plant.
Wow. So over double.
So yeah, so twice as much production, absolutely zero chemical inputs. That proof of concept is kind of what we're excited about, to be able to share with farmers in the region, and show them and give them a vision for what's possible and the ways that they could implement things, not purely from an altruistic, do better, but also, hey, it's going to be better for you and for the planet. Like it's a win-win.
I think that's the silver lining of all of this, is there's not just we're doing this because it's great. We're doing this because it's profitable. We're doing this because it is great on top of it. I think there's so many reasons to turn to regenerative ag and to be pioneers of proving that the profitability is there, the yields are there. I think that's so important. And I will say like you guys also have like some amazing labeling that you have non-GMO, and even sitting right beside another farm that is heavy GMOs, and you have found a way to protect your stuff enough to even keep that certification. Like, so that's amazing that, you know, you're even shielding your products from like the negative impacts of others in the space. So
Hmm.
yeah, tell me a little bit about like, you know, you said no chemical inputs, which is amazing. Would you say there's something about the design that's like protecting that glyphosate from getting into your products?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's part of the design and the things that we're working on. So there's a photo from like a year and a half, 2 years ago, of me standing 1 foot on our farm, 1 foot on the neighbor's farm, you know, incredibly lush green cover crops, and then just barren soil. And that specific spot we have implemented kind of like a natural barrier with some taller plants that create a natural separation and barrier for those chemicals. So those are kind of some of the concepts, not just in this farm, but on the other farms that we're working on, that we've implemented. And then there's also, you know, the concept around some wind barriers and some protection for, you know, heavy winds or heavy rains or different things that affect the region. So that's a great comment and question. And you know, one of the other things that's a certification that we received, and it hasn't made it on pack yet, but I believe the newest printing of the packaging will have this, is the Detox Project's glyphosate residue free certification. So that's something that we're also really excited about, in guaranteeing consumers that our products are free of any glyphosate residue. And so our products are tested regularly by the Detox Project to guarantee that. But again, it's something that we strongly believe in, and that we've submitted our products to, for that kind of verification, and that consumer, consumer satisfaction around that.
I think that's amazing because a lot of reasons some farmers don't pursue the certification is because they would have neighbors who do those things. But again, proof of concept, you're showing it can be done. Like, let's just think of it regeneratively and provide barriers, because that's not the only certification you guys have. You have like a laundry list of certifications of really like really stunning certifications for such a simple product. What are kind of the other big ones that are on the product list? There were so many, I can't think of them all off the top of my head.
Yeah, so you know, certified paleo was one of the first certifications we got, and that, you know, has, that industry or that segment has grown a lot, obviously, and people recognizing that. I think the big piece that allows us to use a certified paleo certification, and a lot of products in this space can't, because has to do with the oil that we use. And so if you're familiar with kind of the cheap commodity oils that are used in most salty snacks, it's, you know, highly refined and super unnatural seed oils that the more and more we research and learn about them, the more we realize that really, really unnatural and not kind for human health and human biome. And so that's a certification we're proud of. It has to do, again, I said with the oil, but the sustainable palm oil that we source is an additional certification. So it's called RSPO, and it is the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil. It's an organization that started because there was a lot of concerns around the practices in harvesting palm oil, the deforestation and loss of endangered species habitat that it was creating. And this was mostly concerned in Southeast Asia. And so there's awesome companies doing palm oil really, really well. And the company that we source from is called Devon, and they work in the kind of northern coast of Colombia. And they have a lot of really cool regenerative agroforest type concepts, but they're the top rated RSPO company in the world, and they adhere to these standards and practices. So they're not causing any kind of natural habitat deforestation or any of these super concerning things around palm oil. So that's another, you know, certification that's on our pack. It's called RSPO. Really cool thing is that you can go on our website and track kind of the traceability of these lots of oil that we use. They're all verified through the RSPO website, and there's a lot of transparency around that, which we think is really awesome. You mentioned non-GMO, and then I believe that's it. Well, I'll just mention this isn't a certification, but all of our products are free of the top 8 allergens. And so that's, again, another piece that lines up with my sister's health journey and kind of our learning around providing people with great alternatives, people who are on some kind of health journey similar to ours.
Yeah, and I feel like you could go for probably like 10 more certifications because your product is so clean, right? Like it's not 20 ingredients, it's under 5 most of the time. Like you really could just pursue so many different certifications based on health, but I think those are really good choices to like prove the cleanliness, traceability, like all that stuff, I think, But you guys could just get a laundry list, like the whole back of the bag could be covered in stuff by the time you were done.
Yeah, that's true. And I have, I think we all have kind of two ways of thinking around certifications, and one is that they can provide consumers with a great initial transparency into what they're purchasing and what they're putting into their body, and that's helpful. And then the other piece maybe relates more to kind of this regenerative ag piece, which is, okay, there's certain certifications that are around and acceptable around regenerative agriculture, but regenerative agriculture, as you mentioned, and we've talked through a little bit, it's so context specific, and it's not a reductionary list of do's and don'ts necessarily. So we believe that it's a journey and a process and a direction that we're headed. And so perhaps one day that means a really awesome certification, but at the moment, we really want to invite people to engage with the story around the way our products are made. And so all that to say, like, we love the certifications we have, and yet at the same time, we want people to engage with the authenticity and the transparency of what we're doing as a brand outside of the certifications. And I think that complements the direction we're going and what we're hoping that customers see as the value of our products.
I think a lot of farmers are very much in that dichotomy of wanting to prove where they are, but also it's so much easier to invite people into that conversation of learning. And it's such a deeper experience anyway, to really just say like, rotational grazing is regenerative. Well, no, like we all know that it could be done poorly and not be regenerative. So I think that's such a good way of saying we're inviting you into the conversation. Come be with us in the experience. And you guys, with the farm being so close to you, that's something you can really, up that tangibility, show the trials. Because to me, that's what gets me excited, the trials and the things you're trying to figure out, because that's where we get to see Mother Nature in action, and we get to almost immediately know when we're wrong because it will tell us. So tell me a little bit more about the farm, the trials, where you're headed. What are you excited about for the next couple years, or what's in the pipeline?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, one of the pieces that we think is important is kind of tracking results and seeing outcomes. And so one of the kind of the pillars to our regenerative commitment is being able to track results and test soil and test nutrient density and test the levels of different compounds in the soil and in the ecosystem. So that's something again, I mentioned we just started this project a couple of years ago. So that is something I'm excited about, is being able to share that very openly and transparently. Another piece is that we just did a contest on social media to give away a trip for 2 people to Colombia to come see our farm, our manufacturing facility, and all these projects. And so that's something that's going to happen this summer, and it's an awesome opportunity for these 2 winners. But additional to that, I think that we really want to be able to produce some really great content around that, and to be able to, the vision and the idea that I feel really passionate about is being able to help people connect with the importance of place.
Yeah.
And that it could hopefully be a way of raising people's consciousness around the way that they source their food. So we recognize that, we make these niche products, these salty snacks, and that is a very small fraction of any household's pantry or fridge, right? But if we as a brand and we as a company can participate in helping build the capacity of our consumers to care about their place. That's an awesome, awesome way to upgrade this regenerative movement, right? So that in this specific scenario, these people are coming to Colombia, they're going to see the farms, they're going to see, and how can they come back to their place, their local community, their local neighborhood, church, farmers market, whatever it is, and start to be more intentional and more caring, more conscious around the way they source the other stuff in their fridge, their meat, their dairy, their cheese, their fruit, whatever it is. Can Artisan Tropic be a catalyst to help people care more for the way that they source the rest of their food? And that is an exciting piece to not just that project, but kind of the way that we're seeing our participation in this regenerative movement. So that's something I'm excited about, something that we're learning and working and trying to figure out what the best way to share that message is. And yeah, that's a bit of what came to mind when you asked that.
Yeah, well, that's leading by example, and I can't tell you how much I love it, right? Because then they're also going to get to, as every farmer knows, they're going to get to the farm and see what definitely didn't go right, because there's always a set of projects that didn't go quite as expected, and then there's also these just magical pieces that you didn't expect to take off. Like I'm sure you've experienced those just unique moments where you find like a bug or a bird or something that you just haven't seen for decades, and all of a sudden it's back because the habitat has been fixed. So I think you're right about that place, like, and that cultivation and being able to connect people to it, because sometimes it's so daunting to say, well, go transform your backyard, just do it, just let it grow natural and figure it out. Well, what does that look like tangibly? How can I experience that? So you taking people there and us trying to take people virtually to give an experience of what that looks like. I think that gives a tangibility to people to say, oh, I can do that. Like that makes sense. It's not a conceptual, it's something you can see and touch. So I think that's such a very important component of this whole movement. So I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from the get-go, I've been drawn to and kind of the story that we've told as a brand is this coffee region of Colombia. And it matters a lot, and it's where we source, and it's these relationships with farmers, all these people and all these lives that are involved in producing a bag of chips are really important. We have tried to tell that story. We've tried to really put a face on the lives that are producing these snacks, and I think our hope is that people would be able to connect not just with Colombia, because that's one place and most people will probably never go there, but to create a level of caring for their own place. Because ultimately, food is about where we source it, and it's always kind of comes down and boils down to like a place. And so if we can help engage people with that process just a little bit more, I think we're happy about the direction of that.
I think so. I think it takes just a bag of chips, quite a mindful bag of chips, to go down that journey of what that plantain has been through and the other additives, what thoughtful process led to it. So I think it makes quite a conscious product to sit and casually, it's not Doritos that we're just trying to put down the half a bag real quick and then be unhappy and not digest anything later. It's a product that we could really like enjoy and savor and have a whole different experience around.
Yeah, that's a bit of what we're doing. I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, I was about to say just so everybody should go out and try these amazing products. You said they're in Whole Foods, most natural grocers, of course, the website, which we'll drop links to in the description. And I will say we will be following your social media. We want to see those two people go on that trip and get to experience the farm for themselves. Anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Yeah, no, I just appreciate what you're doing, appreciate this platform and the way that you're participating in this regenerative movement. And yeah, please drop us a note if there's specific questions around what we're doing. We aim to be honest, transparent, and authentic in all we do, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Juan. I appreciate it.